What's up, Diablo 4 Spiritborns? Let's get into it. One of the top tier builds for leveling. And I want you guys really quickly to look at the levels that I'm showing off in this gameplay. Legitimately, this is not fast forwarded at all. We're going to gain tons of paragons in just a short amount of time for the build guide. So this is exactly what I used for the campaign to get to endgame and dominated endgame with. Now, if you really want to push up to like pit 100 plus, I'm going to give you guys another build in this build, but it's basically just a few different item swaps here. But for starters, let's go over the build guide and kind of how it plays. So for starters, it's going to be a Quill Volley build. This skill is amazing. It's just specifically so good in the campaign because Spiritborn has a problem that Sorceress also has. It's just you don't have a good way to activate vulnerable. But Quill Volley is going to allow you to apply vulnerable. And then we also have Ravager. This allows us to basically teleport towards the enemies. It's great. It also increases our ferocity, but again, teleporting is nice. Then the Hunter, this is our ultimate. It does give us some bonuses on some sort of damage, and also can activate other bonuses. And then we use Armor Hide to grant ourselves Thorns, but it also gives us something called Resolve every few seconds, which is basically, think of it kind of like a Dark Shroud on a rogue, but it just doesn't have the visuals. And then we also have Toxic Skin. This will allow us to actually apply poison to the enemies, just in case you get any bonuses with poison. It can kind of help out. But on top of that, it also can increase your Thorns. Earlier on in the game, Thorns is just amazing. The reason why is they have scrunched all the numbers, and you'd be surprised how much damage you actually can get with Thorns in the earlier stages of the game. But later, we will be dropping out on the Thorns. Now, I will have another Thorns guide, which is going to be a Gorilla Thorns build that I will also be dropping very soon, and it will be more on the Thorn side. But in the very earlier stages, getting Thorns is just so incredibly powerful. It's like free damage. And then we just need a basic skill in case we want resources, but you'll see in the build right now, we don't have any resource problems at all. We don't even run a basic later down the line, but in the earlier stages, you obviously will run out of resources, so it's going to be helpful. And then as far as our Spiritborn masteries over here, this is the specialization for the class. A lot of people will be running Gorilla because they did actually nerf the Jaguar, so everyone and their grandma right now is playing Gorilla. And the reason why is because Gorilla will give you a barrier, and it'll also give you the ability to just straight up apply Thorns to enemies, which is great. You still need a source of Thorns, but it's just going to apply that on every single attack. It's so good. It's free damage, and then every single time you hit an enemy, it actually got updated. It's only half of what it used to be, but it's still so incredibly OP. It just gives you free barrier. It's so good. And then for a secondary spirit, you can run Jaguar or you can run Centipede. Centipede will be better for more defensive stats. You can actually gain free HP because the passive of Toxic Skin is just going to apply the poison. So if you're having trouble with survivability, Centipede is going to be your go-to, but Jaguar, all it really does is gives you the ability to apply one more ferocity. Now, there is an earlier stage where you can gain more ferocity whenever you kill an enemy, but you're going to have maxed out ferocity with this build anyways, so that doesn't really matter. Like, you're going to be able to maintain maximum, but it just gives you +1. Now, ferocity is basically just plus attack speed. That's all it does. It is good, though. It's always good. We just can't really make great use out of the other ones here. But another good choice, if you want to, I actually don't think the Gorilla one is that bad. Getting 100% unstoppable for the whole time you're playing the game is actually a quite nice thing. So you can play whatever secondary spirit you want. I just probably would say Eagle just doesn't really have too much use because you're already going to be using it. So as far as the gear goes, and keep in mind, they've added this Undercity if you guys need any uniques very early on while I was leveling in the campaign. I wish I could show you guys campaign footage, but we're not allowed to until obviously the game comes out, which will be tomorrow. But I want to get this video guide ready for you guys. But I acquired all the uniques before I even finished the campaign. Like, it's so easy to acquire uniques. Now Mythics, don't expect to get those during the campaign. But for starters, the helmet, the Harmony of Abakwa, this thing is incredibly OP. It did get a nerf, but what it's so good for is that all of your skills are additionally Jaguar, Eagle, Gorilla. Basically, this over here will give you free Gorilla on all of your skills, and then the secondary one that you choose will be an additional one based off of Harmony, because now we're going to get, it's already an Eagle skill, which is Quill Volley. That's our main source of our damage, by the way. So we activate this, it gives us, that's the little thing that shoots out and comes back. That thing over there is our main source of our damage. And then it's going to also apply the Jaguar or Centipede, depending on which one you choose. And then it'll also get Gorilla. So it gives us we get 3 bonuses. Each one gets up to, well, it's actually 30x is the highest, but it used to be 50. They nerfed it already, but still, it's very good. 90x damage is no joke. Then next up, we run Ajanthus Shell over here. This thing is incredibly good. Now, it seems kind of scary because you'll notice in the gameplay that my HP will be at 0. Don't worry. It's part of the build. It's kind of like if you've ever played low life, but it's not supposed to always be at low life. As long as you're in combat, you're going to actually have a lot of HP. But even if you don't have HP, your shield is basically your HP anyways. So the reason why it works this way is when we spend our vigor, it's going to actually utilize the ability to heal up to 10% of our maximum life every single time we attack. Now, every second our active cooldowns are going to drain 10% of our maximum life to reduce their durations by 3 seconds. So we get incredible cooldown reduction at the cost of our HP, but we get to heal with it anyways, and we're going to be getting barrier, so it's really not that big of a deal. Now, later in the line, you can drop this. There's a awesome item called the Rod of the Kipelike, which is really great. You can run that as well, but I don't really know what the drop rates of these are. I did get several during the campaign of Janth's Shell, but as far as Rod of Kipelike, I did not get very many of those, so that's why I'm going to go ahead and recommend this. Now, if you do get the Rod, we'll talk a little bit about that, as that's kind of the one thing that we're going to be swapping into later down the line. But this is just so good for cooldown reduction. It just lets you blaze through the entirety of the campaign because you have like no cooldowns on your abilities. And then over here, we can run a lot of different things. I personally really like accelerating. That allowed us to attack a lot faster, giving us extra survivability. There's also a few other aspects that I'll go ahead and like mention in like the notes, but there's one where like based off of your armor with like your gorilla skills will give you like a bunch of extra damage. Any sort of one that will give you extra damage is going to be very good as well here. But I just like accelerating because it makes the game feel a little bit smoother because you just get the extra attack speed. Now keep in mind it will require you to obviously crit, but for the most part every 5 seconds because it's going in and out because it kind of has a boomerang effect once you get the aspect. I just really liked it. But again, this is optional. Any other offensive slot. Then we run Temerity. This is going to allow us to have even more barrier because we need barrier in order to get a bonus over on the Paragon board. But on top of that, it's just really great. I really like the item overall. Just being able to get that consistency of up to 100% additional barrier. Now, you cannot go over this, but basically it will help upkeep the barrier. Now, if you want to run something else, like Tasks of the Dawning Sky are actually pretty good while leveling. And the reason why is because it has flat movement speed, but you can run whatever. You can run Juggernaut, and it doesn't really matter. Throughout the campaign, you don't need to be like absolutely armor capped. I wasn't armor capped, even in the gameplay over here. But on the boots, if you can get like armor, resistances, movement speed, that's kind of what you want to try to go for. And then for our two-hander, we are going to be running Rebounding. So the reason why we run Rebounding is because we have the ability to have the feathers come back. So that's very important that we get this on something. Later, if you can, try to temper on the Quill projectiles to cast twice. That would be ideal. You can temper on like eagle damage, damage to close. I like damage to close better than like distant because how it works is they shoot out and then they come back. If you're closer to them, it's going to hit all of them. It's just much more advantageous to do it that way. Now, it's optional if you want to play Undying. I just felt like it was so free to play this during the campaign. It was just like, it made the game a joke in terms of difficulty. Undying is so incredibly good for this build, but you don't have to have it. I was actually running like Lockrens at one point as well, but this thing will make you even more tankier and you will never have to even pop any potions. It's really great stuff. And then Starlight Aspect. So how it works, and the reason why I like this whole like combination with Janth's Shell and Starlight is so good is because you're able to gain so much resources, and that's how I have free resources. Our resources just go right back to the top. You can even throw in a Kipelike in this build with Janth's Shell and then also run Starlight, and then you have this other build where it drains all of your resources, and then as we are going to be gaining HP, it's going to give us all of the resources back. So you can kind of mix with what I'm about to show you for like the end game version. In fact, like while leveling this build, I'm going to show you guys Lilith real quick. This is Tormented Lilith, and you can see we just deleted her like instantly. This is while I was trying to get my spark. Unfortunately, I didn't get a cool craft, but like we can just go fast forwarded to where we fight her on the like phase 2. It was such a joke to actually do this. Now this is something where you can see she's just instantly melted, but basically, yeah, it's pretty free in terms of like the campaign and getting your spark and your progression. This is again exactly what I used. But Starlight is really good just because, again, it will give you that ability to have infinite resources, and it makes the campaign so much faster. Again, Janth's Shell, just super easy drop. Especially if you go into the Undercity and you put in the thing where it gives you transfer like your class uniques. I think you have to pay obols for that. That was actually really good just to get Janth's Shell. Another thing I want to mention really quick, I wish I could show you guys this, but on the map, actually I might be able to. Okay, I can show you guys it. The reason why is because we can't show off any of the campaign. But over here on the map, it's somewhere around like right here or right here. It's one of these areas right around here that has the actual rebounding aspect, because that's important to get. If you, this gives you a guaranteed way to get this. Once you get this, the game is like super easy. Starlight aspect, I would say it's a little bit more on the rare side to get a good one. I legitimately, for like the longest time, you can see, oh wait, I kind of went back here. But you basically just watch the levels go up. Throughout the entirety, until I got to like Paragon, I think like 200, basically I had the lowest roll of the Starlight. So don't worry that you don't get a good roll on the Starlight aspect. Next up, we run Conceited, just because Gorilla gives us shield every single time. As long as we have a barrier or shield, we get that bonus. A lot of the other bonuses in the earlier stages, sometimes they have like some sort of requirement, but if you can get like Hunter cooldown, that's fine, but nothing really matters too much. You can actually go for any damage type, which is great too. You can get Eagle, Jaguars, you can even get Centipede, depending on what you decide for your secondary spirit, because it counts all the damage anyways. As far as the runes go, I didn't even have these over here because they were just like super rare in the test version, but Ohm is still probably one of like the top tier ones. It just makes the gameplay feel way better because you get that movement speed and damage. And then New actually got buffed. I actually think this one's a really underrated one, considering you get so much dodge in the build anyways, and just gives you the ability to activate Yom in like just 6 seconds. So I like that a lot, especially because this is only really good against bosses, and you know, obviously just don't get hit by the boss mechanics, and it's a pretty easy thing to upkeep. Then for the gems, we run emeralds, and then you just cap out resistances on armor and stuff. I have a couple notes over there as well. And then going into the skill tree now, so the first few points, I do like the sharp thrash over here because we want ferocity in the earlier stages, or you get accelerated, doesn't really matter. Let me make this bigger so you guys can actually see it. But again, like in this gameplay, I promise I didn't fast forward this. Okay, so we're at like okay, let's start over here. So once I started hitting record in, let me show you in 10 minutes, just to show you guys how good this is. And I'll go exactly 10 minutes from here. We went from Paragon 140 to 214, like no Photoshop. Like I could not believe that. Again, if you just like watch like when I was talking, because I did like go back in the footage, but you can see like it is incredible how fast we leveled up with this build. But I'm gonna go ahead and make it bigger over here so you guys can kind of read everything. So we play Quill Volley. The reason why Quill Volley is so good is advantageous. Quill Volley is just, again, that vulnerability that you get is really good. Now later we will be getting this because we're going to convert it to a basic skill, but Vigorous Velocity, we're just getting like basically all this extra like resources and damage. There's actually another one here. Not every website is kind of like complete, by the way. There's a few things that I'll talk about. Like the Paragon Board is kind of messed up for a lot of build websites. It's because they have not updated it yet, because we just got another recent update. But Toxic Skin over here, just life on kill, getting some extra armor. This gives us like 400 thorns, I believe, is the number that you get once you get this. You activate it, and your thorns goes crazy. And while leveling, dude, it's just such a breeze. And we get, since we convert to Jaguar, we get these. But if you want to convert to Centipede, that's fine too. Centipede will give you more survivability. And then for our ultimate over here, we just get more resources. If you want, you can put more points into this and remove points out of this. It just makes the leveling process just so smooth over here while you have an ultimate equipped. And then we activate the Hunter very often. And the reason why we use this is because it's going to overfill our ferocity by 4 stacks, and that's really important. Speaking of ferocity, I think we skipped over this, but we actually want duelist aspect. It'll give you basically 20% extra attack speed. It's really good for the utility category over there. But yeah, going back over here, as far as it goes, we actually go for adaptive stances. Now, the main stat did get nerfed. So how it works is the base of your spirit is going to give you whatever. So the base meaning like what its original thing is. Since we're Eagle, it just gives us 30% movement speed. Again, for the campaign and breezing through the content to get your first, like, you know, 250-ish Paragons, I loved this. This was great. I didn't really feel like I was bottlenecked by damage. But later, a lot of people will be swapping into Prodigy's Tempo. It just will give you extra ranks and also help you out with cooldown reduction so you can drop the Janthus Shell, because later, basically, up until Torment 3, the game's pretty easy for most, like, Diablo players that have played the game for a while. Torment 4 is a huge, like, up spike and stuff, so Janthus Shell, a little bit dangerous in the later stages of the game, especially before you get the Mythic Materials, which is still one of the best things in the entire game. Now, next up for the Paragon Board. So for starters, since I'm going to be running, now, again, I'm going to show you guys 2 different builds here. Since I'm running on the skill tree over here for this variant, because this was huge, the reason why I really like this, to get 50% bonus of your core stats, it's crazy when you just activate another skill for 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, as long as you push something that is not Quill, yeah, you're going to get that 50% bonus to all of your core stats, which, again, that is, like, so incredibly busted. They did nerf it, and they also nerfed Headhunter, but I still think it is very, very, very viable to go ahead and get, considering, yeah, you still get a 300% bonus. It used to be 600%. but they did cut it in half. But I still like it. It's a really good thing to have, and then you just pick up all the dex nodes. Just very, very nice. Now, early on in the game, do not forget all of the dexterity nodes. Just try to move along and grab all the legendary nodes as fast as possible. So, anyways, for starters, we get Headhunter. But, again, you don't need to level up Headhunter, like, and get every single one. Later down the line, though, in the second one, we're going to get Sapping. I'd probably just rush straight towards Sapping, though, to be honest, because you get this nice one where if you cast 3 of whatever skills, it just gives you X 30 damage and it restores some of your vigor, which is great. And then we move on to getting Revenge over here. Now, I understand that, like, this build isn't necessarily all pure thorns, and I was even saying you're going to swap to thorns after. The reason why is it just increases your flat damage, and then also just builds up because it's all damage they take, not just thorns. And the other reason why we actually get this is because it increases our resources. Over here, it says something like damage to crowd control is actually like wrong. Again, a lot of these build websites, they're all getting data mine stuff because, well, the official game isn't out yet. But since I was able to play, I kind of know what they have actually changed to. After the second one on Revenge, it doesn't really matter the order that you get. The only important one is Sapping is over here. The rest, it doesn't really matter too much. But then we go to Vicious Shield, which is why we actually go for shields, because it's another huge multiplier. It's like one of the strongest ones. And with Temerity, that will just max it out. Gorilla, I believe, will give you 60, but you cannot go over 100%, by the way. The game won't actually let you. So going past it doesn't really do anything. Anyways, yeah, we go ahead and we get Canny over here, so it's going to make it so we deal non-physical damage. Is going to non-physical damage increases all the non-physical damage the enemy takes, and it's also going to increase non-physical damage, which is basically everything that is, you know, not physical, which would include lightning because it does lightning damage. That's kind of how it works. Like Jaguar is fire, and then Eagle is lightning, and then Centipede is poison. And it doesn't matter, we only really care about the damage with the Quill. And then we go to Revealing, and we get Fitness over here. So the last one, honestly, this one over here is optional in terms of legendary node, but it just had like just a good little pathing here. This one doesn't really matter. Again, the only important one is the second one in terms of the order. Then we get Exploit. I know I already have a way to apply Exploit, but I think for quality of life, dude, it's so much better just to automatically make the things vulnerable. Your speed significantly increases. In fact, if you get this glyph earlier on, I would not mind throwing this one in. It's a great glyph for like every single build. Even though if you can have vulnerability applied, how it works is that you have to hit 3 enemies with 3 of the quills to actually get the vulnerable, which is really easy against a boss and stuff, but against the smaller stuff, it just makes the quality of life so much faster. So we just take up all of like the defensive nodes, all the extra damage over here, and then again, the last one is, can I click on this? Oh, let me see if I can add it, because you're only allowed to technically go into 5 glyphs in total. However, I think with the build website, you can see there's not really a good one to choose. I tried Drive. Drive wasn't too bad. It's just for bosses, this thing was just garbage. It didn't really do anything. Infighter, again, terrible against the bosses, and then this one's like specifically meant for Thorn, so it's not going to help us out too much. But pretty much what it comes down to is the last one. It doesn't really matter. This is even kind of weak against bosses. It just allows you to have a good consistency on a way to, for the non-bosses, basically, to have a knockdown which can actually increase your damage as well. It's okay. It's just that there really isn't a very important one. But this is the one I would say if you want to swap to something else, feel free to go and do so. Now, like I said, there's going to be 2 builds in one here. So if you want the crazier build that's more for like the super, super later stages of the endgame. Oh gosh, we ran out of gameplay. Okay, you know what? We got some, we'll do some pits over here. Anyways, so, the difference is on the other build, we're going to be running Raw to keep it late game. If you get this item while you're progressing, hey, definitely equip it. It's fantastic. It's going to make it so your core skills are now basic skills, and they deal less damage, but the big side is that once you're at max resource, it's going to deal a full damage, and it's going to crit, and it's going to go ahead and deal a massive amount of damage bonus, because you get increased critical strike damage per point. So you want to max out a lot of your resources here. So what we do is we run 2 different things over here. We run Ring of the Midnight Sun, which has a special power of critical strike to restore percent of the mana that you've spent within the last 2 seconds, and increases your critical strike damage bonus. So that's really good. And then we also stack it with another special ring called the Ring of the Midday Hunt. So what this does, none of the stats really matter on this, other than your maximum vigor is increased by 50%, and every kill grants you some vigor. That's fine. Then The main part of it, though, is just that the first part where it's your maximum vigor is increased by 50%. That's all we use it for. So the reason why we run Banished Lord's Talisman is we try to get 275 resource, and then we have this activate every single time. So we have 100% crit and overpower on every single hit. Now, this is going to require some min-maxing. It's going to require you to have a decent amount of Paragon points, which is why I would say transition into this build. But just keep in mind, this one is more so in the beta category over here, as in... there are a couple other things I kind of want to try out with this, and one of them is going to be the Pain Gorgers as we convert with our skill into the basic skill. But as far as my testing goes, because keep in mind, this is like all working off of like the version of the game where they may update something over here, and they might just brick this build. Hopefully it doesn't. But this build, I can guarantee you it works, the first one. The second one, I plan to transition into this, and it's going to obviously require mythics because we're really strict on room here. But it should be, every single hit should be an overpower, and it should be a crit, and that's what I wanted to do with this. And then we're going to have to put rebounding in our gloves over here. But one of the rings is basically useless. And then how it works is, since we're going to have a bunch of like resource gen over here, you guys can see this, like, yeah, this is still like early leveling. It's only a pit 35, but I was leveling up, I think, some of my some glyphs, so I did not have like completely maxed out stuff. Again, the point of this is like a leveling build, but this is more so for the end game part. There's a couple other things that I wanted to mention over here. Like, there's a couple notes of like what you can swap to. One thing that I don't have it in the gameplay over here, but I did swap to Scourge eventually for more damage. This is only really for like T4, which I felt like was much better. But as far as the skill tree goes, there are some differences in the skill tree, so make sure you guys look at that because there are differences. And then also for the starter board, I removed Headhunter and I put it in Spirit so we get more crit damage, because we basically have all of the crit, because we don't need to get any, we shouldn't really need to get any crit. In fact, we can actually just remove crit here from the gloves and maybe get like something else. We can just get like crit damage, because we should have 100% crit in this build. But yeah, like I said, this is what I actually plan to go for once we're at the late stage of the game. But anyways, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for the video. There's like 2 different variants of it. If there's any suggestions for improvements, definitely let me know down below. Oh, another really important thing, at the very end over here, since we swap off Headhunter, I actually, since we don't also run Janthus Shell, and you can actually do this if you don't want to run Janthus Shell, is to run Prodigy's Tempo. It's just kind of one of the better things to give you cooldown reduction, and it can help out with, well, you're not going to have any resource problems once you run Radakipilike, but again, this item is a lot more rare than Janthus Shell. Like, I had so many of these while I was progressing. That's why I really suggest it for leveling. I know it's going to make you have, like, no HP, but don't worry. If you copy the build, I just blaze through the campaign, because the Gorilla will give you 5% every single time you attack. Try to attack real fast, and you'll be good to go. Anyways, that should be the build. Everything will be pinned down below. Thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell, and I'll update you guys if we do need to make some adjustments and changes. But catch you guys in the next video, and I'll also be dropping a completely different Gorilla Thorns build very soon. But peace out, guys.